Hi, this is Troy. We just got done with the philosophy midterm. Nice job on that. And now we're going to start studying for the next exam. We're going to go over a few moral theories right now, beginning with deontology. Like always with deontology, we're going to start with Kant, Immanuel Kant. Okay, so to start off with Kant, we need to ask the question, what is good in and of itself? What is an intrinsic good? And there's a suggestion of like happiness, but this leads to consequentialism and stuff and virtue ethics. It's a goodness based view. Now, Kant rejects this. He denies that happiness is always good because what about like the happiness of the wicked? When bad people are happy, bad things usually happen. So, if happiness isn't good, what is good? Well, he answers that there's only one thing that's good, and that's a good will, the opposite of wickedness. So, a good will that does the right thing. The will creates intentions or actions and basically duty for duty's sake. This is a rightness based view. It starts from right and wrong and then derives morality from there. So we need to define right and wrong without appealing to the good, like in happiness. Otherwise, the view is circular. Because then we say, oh, well, what is good? Well, what is good is what is right. Well, what is right? What is right is what is good. What is good, that's what's right. It's just circular. So then, how do we determine our duties? How do we determine what to do with this goodwill? Well, then, Kant comes up with this thing called the categorical imperative. Break it down. It's an imperative, which is a command, and it's categorical because it's not hypothetical. A hypothetical is basically saying if you want to A, then B. Um, the force of the ought is based on what you want. Like, if you want cookies, then you ought to steal cookies out of the cookie jar. But if I don't want cookies, then the ought to steal cookies out of the cookie jar is just like it's blank. It's just smoke. It doesn't mean anything. Um, so then basically these arguments are based on the value behind them, like my value of cookies. That is a hypothetical claim. A categorical claim is kind of different. It says you ought to do this or you ought not to do this. It doesn't matter on the value behind it, like what you want. Um, it gives reasons to everyone regardless of desires. Like you ought to help, or you ought to eat, you ought to save lives. There is no if you want to do this, you ought. There is nothing like that. So, all moral imperatives are categorical, but Kant says there is only one. There is the categorical imperative, which has several formulations in class. You know there's three. In class we only went over two, because basically it's all the same thing, just reiterated different ways. Kant is boring like that. But the first formulation is called the universal law formulation. And it says, an act is right if and only if you can consistently will that the maxim of the action be made a universal law. So let's break this down. The maxim of the action. That is a general principle or intention. And it is an intention with all the particulars removed. Example, I will hit Troy on the head with to make a cool noise with a water bottle. When you remove the particulars, you're saying hit on head with water bottle to make noise. It's pretty simple. You just simplify it as much as possible. But this problems, we'll get to the problem situation later. Next, we need to analyze the term universal law. And it says everybody acts on the maxim. If you can imagine everybody doing this, then it's called you can consistently will it. Much like the golden rule, maybe? So there's two ways to fail this. You know this as the imperfect and perfect rules, but basically it is the failure to conceive and failure to will. First, failure to conceive is basically it's not possible to conceive this as being a universal law. Like it just faces a mathematic contradiction almost. So lying, um, it's like a lying promise. You don't intend to keep this promise, but you say it anyways. But a lying promise destroys real promises, and if there is no real promises, then a lying promise can't happen. Kind of like if you go up to mom and say, "Oh well, mom, I promise I won't take the cookies." You say that over and over again, and you always take the cookies, and then eventually you go up to mom and say, "Hey, mom, I promise not to take the car, like to a big party," and then she just like bullshit, like I know, like I don't trust you anymore. So then you realize, oh, I can't make promises anymore, and if I can't make promises anymore, then I can't make lying promises anymore. Oh wow, I'm shit out of luck. So imagine if everyone did that, then promises would cease to exist. So that's the failure to conceive. Second is the failure to will. You can conceive, but you can't will it in every case. Such as, like, would the world seem okay if you did do this, like all the time? Think of refusing help. You don't want a world because you will sometimes need help. Everybody needs help at one point. So imagine a world where no one helped, ever. It'd be terrible. So, challenges to the first formulation, the universal law formulation, and we're saying first let's look at some counterexamples. There are right actions that are deemed wrong or wrong actions that are deemed right by the theory. So basically it's just a law, a flaw in how the theory was come about, and thus, ooh, wow, that doesn't make sense, basically. So we have a few cases. Um, we have the famous Nazi at the door case. Kant says that all lying is wrong, but say a Nazi comes up to your door and says, "Hey, do you have any Jews in here?" And you're just like, and you do have Jews in there, and you're just like, "No." Well, that's bad. You can't lie according to Kant, so you have to tell him, "Oh, there are some Jews in here. Yes. Sorry, my good friends, you're gonna be like massacred." So there's a solution to this problem that the Kantians figured out, and they simply say, pick a different maxim. Instead of saying, don't lie, say, lie to the wicked to save the innocent. If you always do this, life will be good. But we but then we come up to a realization we can't make the maxims too general. Hmm. Hmm. Well, the general principle, the general problem, is identifying the right level of generality for these maxims. Say, it's just like, well, the world's fine if you don't lie, right? Because then truth would be destroyed. But then again, I want to lie to the wicked. Well, then again, I also want to lie to my mom when I want cookies and I want to take the car. So, let me see if I can make super duper, like, specific. I can say, lie to Troy's mother in order to, when in need of car or cookies. See, it's a it's a it's a maxim, and I can see people doing this. Why? Because there's only one actor, me. So this, I can conceive it, I can will it. It must be okay. So that's a general problem. Um, Another problem is that there might not be any or many principles that can truly be universalized. Perhaps every principle has an exception. Like, you gotta think. There's 6 billion people on the planet. There's thousands, maybe millions of cultures, thousands and millions of examples people live in every day. Can you really universalize a principle that covers all of that? Really? Oh, I like to see you do that. It's just hard to conceive that. There's just so many possibilities. There's a question of, can you even do it? Is it even possible? So now we have the second formulation, the humanity formulation, or the end in itself formulation. It says an action is right if and only if it treats everyone involved as ends in themselves and never merely means. So it means to an end, um, and Kant believes that it is sometimes permitted to use people as means, but not only as a means. So then we have O'Neill come in, and she talks about Kantianism. And what does she say? She says there's two ways to use people as mere means, and there's coercion and deception. Coercion, when you force someone into a situation that they normally wouldn't want, and then there's deception, leading people to believe falsehoods. Because why are these bad? Because you're missing consent. There needs to be consent with the individual in order for this to be a moral law, at least according to deontology. So, in the ends in themselves, we basically have a respect for human dignity because we need to obtain consent, and why per people? Because people are persons. They're rational agents. They have own plans and purposes, and we have to respect that. Right actions treat people as people. Wrong ones don't. Simple as that. At least sometimes need to help others with their projects, plans, and purposes. That's what Kant says. We sometimes need to do that. Like, man. So we have more problems and challenges to the second maxim, and this is great good at expense of someone's consent. It was basically like consequentialism. That, like, say you could save 1,000 people by killing one. Is that okay? Big question. Deontology says no. But then again, consequentialism would say, yeah, it's fine. A lot of people would be like, yeah, you probably should kill one person to save like a billion. So then we have the classic trolley cases. And you know from those, it's like you have a track, but then you have wait, this is supposed to be two tracks. Anyways, you have, well, a track that goes like this and goes like this, but it also goes like this. And over here, you have like a city that you're gonna hit a gas rocket and it's gonna kill like 1,000 people. But you also have the option of moving this way and you hit an innocent child. So deontology, it would say that you're kind of stuck, you're fucked, basically, because you if you go this way, you're going to kill a lot of people. But if you make the choice to go this way, that means you have the intention to harm this innocent child in order to save these many people. Deontology would say that you can't do that, so you actually just need to sit back. But then people are uncomfortable with that because then it's just like you had the chance to save 1,000 fucking people and you didn't do it. You're a terrible person. We would call you a terrible person. But deontology doesn't allow you to be that good person. It makes you a terrible person in that sense. So Kant's followers, they could say that in this case you can't obtain the consent all the time. So you can use the when they should consent or when they could consent. Such as this child over here should consent to me killing him in order to save all these people, all these innocent bystanders. So that's a solution to it. Many people are not familiar with that because they can be abused very easily. It's like, oh hey, kid, um, give me your mom's car keys. Well, I'll just take them from you. Well, that kid should consent because I'm an adult. So, and I know better, right? They should consent, and this is okay. Let me see. Um, some people just can't give consent, such as children and non-human animals. And the response, again, is basically a presumed consent that would the adult version of the child give consent? Well, yeah. Like you're sitting in front of TV and teaching you all this violent stuff, and you're just like, "Hey, little Johnny, don't watch that." And then 20 years later, the adult version would be like, "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for not letting me watch that, because then I will become a serial killer." Um, he wouldn't say that when he's like 5 years old, but the adult version would say that. So we just need to presume that he would say that 20 years from now, and I'll save him from being a serial killer. But this comes into idea of benefits and harm. Why would he give consent? He would give consent because he would benefit from it, that he would avoid harm. Oh wow, we're touching on intrinsic goods again. We can't do that, but we're just gonna go on. Hopefully, this works out. Non-human animals, they can still feel pain, so we shouldn't blow up puppies because they wouldn't consent to it. Oh, why wouldn't they consent to it? Because they would feel pain. More intrinsic goods. So basically, we have this idea that in the end, all these problem cases come down to consequentialism on goodness based theories. And we don't want to do that. Kant doesn't want to do that. But then it goes circular and we avoid the real reason Kant does this, which is bad, at least for Kant. So the last problem case is beings who do give consent, but it's bad. It's like people usually wouldn't do this, such as like almost like suicide cases, uh, euthanasia. If people consider euthanasia as bad, then the categorical imperative won't fit them. But then we have uh, bondage and torture, and um, like in the sexual sense. Um, because what happens is that sometimes people die, and it gets pretty crazy. We've all thought about it. Um, but then there's possible responses, and there's still a lack of consent because these people are broken because they want harm. But then it's like it goes back into the benefit and harm thing. Like for example, of a broken person. Like apparently in like Germany, there was this person who was on the internet and said, "Hey, one thing I want to do in life is I want to eat somebody." And then another guy was like, "One thing I want to do in life is I want to be eaten." So those guys actually like this actually happened. They got together and they killed the one guy and ate him. Like that's fucked up. So what happened? Well, what happens now is that we consider them broken people because they want harm, this intrinsic good. Again, consequentialism shows its ugly face in deontology. So basically, the main problem with deontology is that it's a rightness-based theory, but then in the end, when you circle everything back and spiral it down to the very nitty-gritty, it turns out as a goodness-based theory. So Kant actually did not succeed. Well, he succeeded for the most part. Just these problem cases, we kind of pin him down. Where it's like, hey, he still comes back to intrinsic goods. So that is Kant's categorical imperative and some deontology right there. Next, we're going to work on utilitarianism, but that's for another day. I'll see you later.